Namaste to every one of you, and thank you for having me here at Michigan University. It's such a joy to meet all of you and the deep interest you have shown in the secrets of happiness. So, we are going to study the science of happiness, and I'm going to put in a lot of information in this because, as I told you, a whole lot of people are interested in knowing this subject thoroughly and how exactly we are doing it in universities in India. This entire thing is floated as courses in the IITs, and in every semester almost we have courses on this. It's called by various names. The science of happiness is the science of consciousness, and it is the science of empathy. So it's all interconnected. Many ideas you will find we are drawing from yoga. By yoga, I mean Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the actual process of meditation, and a lot from the Upanishads, because the Indian spiritual heritage has, in a very very deep way, studied almost you can say everything about happiness. They use two words, Sukham and Ananda. Sukha and Ananda. Sukha is to do with that level of happiness which is not yet absorptive. It is to do with the joy we get from objects, from relationships, from different things in our life. So that's put under the category of Sukha, but Ananda is defined as that level of happiness which comes with deep absorption along with it. So much happiness that you are just merged into the experience. It's an immersive experience. So these two are very well defined in the Indian spiritual heritage. I mainly talk of yoga, drawn from the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and Vedanta, drawn from the Upanishads. And this is something very real, this science. I'm on a circuit of universities here, and so far we have covered 6 universities. You just heard Princeton, MIT, all these. And everywhere we have been discussing the science of consciousness in a very deep way. But I also have very funny experiences in some of these universities. Like many of them have been following the courses which we are doing there, and suddenly when they see me, they're startled. They have only seen me on YouTube. So one young man actually got so startled when he saw me suddenly that he said, "Oh, are you real?" So like that, you may wonder: is the science of happiness real, or are we? It's such in-depth knowledge, and from where am I drawing it? So the sources of this, I think, it's very real. First thing. The second is the sources from where I draw it is first of all from sadhana. Second is from scripture. I told you, yoga and Vedanta have enormous ideas. And if you just can draw from that source, in very, very pure, very clearly put in all these scriptures, and you can put it in a scientific idiom, in the modern language, you will get the science of happiness, the science of consciousness, anything you want, such in-depth knowledge that I tell you, this is how I spend my a large part of my morning hours. After my meditation and spiritual practice, I dive into the scriptures, and the ideas just hit me. They're luminous ideas, I would say, because these rishis experienced so many of these facts and didn't know how to put it in a language, because language is still limiting, but they attempted. And so you have the scriptures of Vedanta, the Upanishads, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, giving you tremendous ideas. So you see, we are not making this up. This is there. You can trace every idea to something, some source. Now, before I dive into the science of happiness, let me give you this clear distinction between what we are calling Sukha and Ananda. Sukha is a kind of objective joy. You get it from objects. And it is of short duration, which means as soon as you have experienced the object, your mind will ask, what more? What else is there? It will go to the next object. It is not an absorptive kind of joy, not an immersive experience at all. And it puts you additionally on the hedonic treadmill. I don't know if you know this concept, it's very interesting. It's part of modern psychology. The hedonic treadmill tells you that all your happiness, which comes from objects, it is based on the expectation of great joy, great happiness, the anticipation to fully fulfill yourself through the experience. But once you have the experience of that object, the mind does not get absorbed in the object at all. In fact, it will give you a limiting form of joy, and then you get bored or tired of it. Overindulgence actually causes revulsion, and you immediately jump to the next object. Check this out and see. I can give you an example here because we are in Michigan. Take the example of cheesecake. Yes, all young people love it, but how much can you have it? It's such a heavy stuff. In fact, you can have one piece, two pieces at the most. After that, it feels repulsive. You don't like it. You can't have four pieces in one go, four huge pieces. And secondly, if you do that, you will develop utter revulsion for the object itself. So as soon as you had your piece of cheesecake, your mind will jump to what next? What do I do next? It doesn't lead to any form of absorption. See, this is the difference between sukha and ananda. In the case of ananda, you get absorbed in the experience. It is not of short duration. It is long-lasting happiness, absorptive and immersive in nature, and fulfilling in nature. It doesn't cause mere sense stimulation or sense indulgence. It is more of the nature of a kind of fulfillment. It gives your prana or vital energies and a deep awareness experience, ananda. But it's not so in the case of what we call sukha or just objective, the joy you get from objects. So these are broadly speaking, the differences between the two types of experiences. Now, these have been studied in very deep ways. If I actually go into the science of happiness, I have a whole lot of slides here. But I will be focusing on some slides because there's a lot of knowledge packed into these slides. If you carefully see, almost all of our sense experiences fall under the sukha category. They give you some amount of joy, some level of satisfaction, but that's not fulfilling. That's not fulfilling nor absorptive in nature. But if you see the life of great spiritual masters like Sri Ramakrishna, for example, you will find them absorbed in a kind of very elevating state where they actually don't need anything to keep them happy. They are just blissful and ecstatic out of some kind of inner joy, inner happiness, which we don't know how to describe it. It's completely fulfilling kind of experience. So much so that objects appear to them like taking away that bliss. So they shun them. They put them away. Now, what is this level of happiness? This is also something we will study. Because at least we must have an intellectual, clear concept of the levels of happiness available to the human experience. The entire reach of your consciousness and happiness. We must have some solid concept of that. Otherwise, our science of happiness will not be complete. If by happiness I understand only a small amount, the little sukha which the senses can bring me, that's not enough. So we will be going into these levels of happiness, understanding these levels of happiness. Now just look at this slide. Vivekananda says here, what we call happiness and good here are but particles of that eternal bliss. All these spiritual masters have given us this kind of idea or understanding of a superlative form of happiness, the ananda aspect. And they have always, comparatively speaking, here whatever we experience is something small. This is what they have told us, isn't it? So now we will penetrate into this concept. What exactly does this mean? And how are we able to experience those levels of joy? Not that we don't have an inkling of them. See, there have been times when you have experienced, deep levels of meditative awareness, the silence of the mind, the stillness you feel when you see a glorious sunset or sunrise. You have felt these experiences. The sheer joy of looking into the eyes of a baby. You have felt these experiences. Now we will find even deeper experiences than these. And how your mind engages with it and produces higher levels of bliss, higher levels of happiness. And the importance of the mind in happiness, the importance of your awareness in generating high levels of happiness, all this will be under observation. You must remember the mind of a spiritual aspirant, of a spiritual master, is so empty and decluttered of unnecessary things that his happiness remains complete. Not just it's an episode of happiness. He carries it with him. So he carries a different level of vibrancy because the content of his mind is exceptional. There's a high degree of awareness there and the right kind of thought. And his energies are very high, so his awareness is complete. So he lives in a perpetually blissful state. If you see the life of the great master, Sri Ramakrishna, he used to exude a form of happiness which was so infectious, the people around him would get swayed by it, they actually felt the touch of it. You looked into his eyes, you would feel something of his state. And Bhav Samadhi was so natural to him, you must have read it in his life. Every day on a regular basis, every day he would go into these states and come out of it. And the people around him would feel the vibrancy of that state. They would feel it. His samadhi was like that. And he hardly needed an excuse to go into samadhi. Isn't it? Even somebody standing in the pose of Krishna would put him into that state. Somebody uttering the word Charanamrit would put him into Bhav Samadhi because it would evoke in him the thought of the Divine Mother. And once somebody closed an umbrella in front of Sri Ramakrishna and he went into Samadhi. So when he came out of it, he was asked, how did this happen? He said, that closing of the umbrella reminded me of the sudden withdrawal of the mind into the self, into God consciousness. And so I went into that state. He would have a tough time, a hard time to bring his mind back to the normal state of consciousness. He would struggle to do it. That's why he asked for some water, some sweetmeats, something like that. Because his mind would not readily come back to the normal state of consciousness. It was perched at a very different level of consciousness. This was Sri Ramakrishna. And because he lived amidst people, people saw it day and night. So what we understand by Ananda, it comes from the life of these masters. In fact, without them, we wouldn't understand. Because you can only discern or analyze the states you have experienced. But that this is possible for the human mind, this level of consciousness which is possible for the human being, this you can only learn from the lives of the masters. So we will be going a little into that also to understand the great secrets of happiness. And now just watch this slide. The hunt for happiness, as you know, is global. Most of our experiences are subjective, which means they are beyond measurement but not beyond comprehension, isn't it? A lot of painstaking research is being carried out, especially in positive psychology today. And the study of happiness combines positive psychology, neurophysiology, endocrinology, brain science, and spirituality. All these fields have come together now. Because it's always an interdisciplinary approach. You see, the deeper you go into any discipline, you will find it will be an interdisciplinary approach. The more you go into consciousness, the more it will unite all fields. So you can see this on this slide. And then how it is being studied today, the study of happiness as a science. See, the criteria of science, you know it very well. First of all, there should be rational investigation, inquiry, and empirical observation and inference. Then you require quantification, very important, quantifiability, and then repeatability and intersubjective verification. By definition today, what is happiness? Happiness is also called well-being, positive effect, satisfaction and fulfillment. Now, positive effect actually means a positive mood or positive emotion. But there's a more comprehensive definition when you say it is about well-being. You just feel good. You just feel good. And still better definition would be you feel fulfilled, happy and completely satisfied from within yourself. Now, if you actually try to understand these subjective experiences logically, you will find they are logically incomprehensible sometimes because they have their own logic. But you must remember these equations, that is why logically comprehensible is what we call true in science. But logically incomprehensible is not equal to false. Something can be logically incomprehensible and yet true because your logic is limited, not because it is illogical. So, science of happiness, science of consciousness, subjective sciences fall under this category. They have their own logic, which we will explore. We have yet to develop our logical systems actually. So then it naturally becomes a science because you are conducting a rational investigation and quantifiability of the parameters involved and intersubjective verification also is perfectly possible. So it is as much a science as anything else. Now, the global debate going on all over the world is what exactly should contribute to human welfare and growth? Should it be all these factors, income, health, talent, skills, good governance, or should it be your levels of happiness? This is the great global debate. I'm sure you've heard of it. It is going on wherever people are trying to understand what should be actually the measure for growth in human societies. Should it be merely GDP, the economic growth? Some countries have disagreed on this point. You know about GNH, Gross National Happiness. Bhutan has accepted this. So they try to understand happiness in terms of, they try to understand growth in terms of how happy the people are. And they have introduced some very fundamental measures like compulsory use of music in schools to keep children calm, to help them grasp things better, and many such techniques. The insistence on sports and healthy ways of living, healthy habits, a healthy lifestyle, healthy food, all this will contribute in a bigger way to human happiness than the way we understand just economic growth. So this is one thing. Then of course you have measurement guidelines and benchmarks from the UN state that we combine qualitative and quantitative methods to provide insights on the levels of well-being, happiness or life satisfaction and quality of human life. For this we need to analyze different aspects of happiness and design private and public policy with maximum happiness as the goal. See, these are the general determinants of happiness, which people understand. Absolute income, relative income, social relationships, comparisons, employment status, civil status, self-esteem, sense of purpose, aspirations, relative income, consumption patterns, your genetics, health and age factors, time usage, autonomy, all these contribute to a relative understanding of happiness. But the most scientific study of happiness you will find in yoga and Vedanta. Because yoga is not just describing these levels, the happiness you get out of this, but the tools of self-transformation and higher awareness which are seen to yield higher states of happiness. Isn't this interesting? Yoga is actually raising the bar of happiness. What you get out of all these the determinants of happiness here, which I put on the slide, they tell you it's just about your, physical comfort and mental security. It's not exactly about being happy by yourself. These things, your income and relationships and self-esteem, all of this will give you physical comfort, mental security, peace of mind to a certain extent. Doesn't go beyond that. But for deep inner happiness, transformative happiness, the kind of fulfillment we are all yearning for, you need to raise the bar of your vital energies and awareness. And that is what yoga is fundamentally about. By yoga, I don't mean those asanas, the physical exercises. I learned here that you have to be very careful in using the word yoga because for most people it means those exercises which are very easy to do. Yoga is about meditative awareness. When I use the word yoga, I mean that. So let us understand this is how they are studying happiness, and its effects can be applied to all aspects of life, including your professional domain. So a lot of this is very practical. It will help you in everyday life. Now let's go into how they study happiness. See, raising the metric or bar for happiness through yoga. Fundamentally, yoga psychology will tell you you have different levels of happiness available to your experience. The lowest rung of the ladder is sensory happiness, they'll tell you. So most people know only that level of happiness, but you see the graph there, it decreases with time. It's inconstant. You can never rely on it. It puts you on the hedonic treadmill and you keep jumping from object to object. That's why it leaves you unfulfilled. And then they'll tell you the next level of happiness available to you is born of thought and emotion. Higher good thinking and emotion, a kind of emotional energy which brings sweetness into your life. This will give you greater happiness than mere sensory level happiness. So, to increase your levels of happiness, you have to climb the ladder. You can't try to optimize happiness at one rung. This is the message. Higher than that is the third rung of the ladder, which is intellectual absorption. You know it very well. Many of you are here in Michigan University. Intellectual absorption, after the episode is done, you feel so refreshed. Isn't it? Because you've generated flow. Flow is that state where you are spontaneously absorbed, intellectually absorbed, and lose sense of time. And without effort, because your skill met your challenges at that point. So there's a constant flow of thought towards one particular subject, and it is so transformative, so engaging. So this is a higher level of happiness, what we call the intellectual level of happiness. Flow gives a lot of satisfaction. In fact, most people, intellectuals, this is how they gain their happiness. So when you have that level of happiness, this level falls short of your standards. Usually it happens like that. Then you have spiritual levels of happiness. Before that, you actually have another rung, which is the level of service. See, you make people happy anywhere. Your mind will just gladden. Or the service you give to God. Every day many of you I'm sure practice something. It gives you a kind of satisfaction within you. So this is the level of service, seva. It brings a lot of happiness into life. Then after that you have the meditative level of happiness. You practice some real meditation. You will feel a burst of joy within you which is unexplainable. Because you touch awareness, pure awareness in that state. So you see, these spiritual higher states, they are almost transcendental. You can't put them under any other category, and they leave you fulfilled. So much so that you lose sense of time, you lose a sense of identity in that state, and yet you're very happy. Extremely, fully immersive kind of joy you can experience with meditation. With meditation comes devotion, ecstasy, all of these. This is the spiritual category. So always you see it was placed that this is a superlative form of level of happiness which can't be compared with the other levels. Now the whole point of this ladder of happiness is if you want higher and higher levels of happiness, you must learn to climb the ladder and not try to maximize objects on at one rung. Just getting more and more things at one particular level is not going to increase your happiness. There's always a diminishing marginal return. You know, many of you will know this that when you have invested fully into something, after some time, especially when it comes to money, after some time you will always see there's a diminishing return. This happens even in these levels of happiness. So after some time this is dissatisfactory. So climb the ladder of happiness and you would see that the evolutionary ladder is inbuilt in our central nervous system and brain. That's the beauty of it. It is inbuilt. And in what sense is it inbuilt? Your happiness, yoga will tell you, depends upon the clarity of your mind and your awareness. An overcluttered mind removes your happiness, isn't it? It's everyone's experience. But a clear state of mind and with positive thought, bhakti, all this enhances your happiness like anything. So they will tell you that yoga actually generates altered states of consciousness which results in higher happiness. This is pretty obvious for anyone who has gone to a certain level of meditation. So you see, that is why that picture has been put there, that your entire personality, the physical body, prana, mind, buddhi, atman, all of this will awaken fully if you are able to generate the spiritual levels of happiness. Until then, you require objects to keep you happy. Am I right? It doesn't make sense? See, for a very depressed mind, a negatively conditioned mind, which is not at all used to any form of discipline or spirituality is a far cry, they require things to keep them engaged, otherwise they'll go crazy. They require a mobile phone to keep them engaged, they require music around them, they require 4 or 5 tracks running at any given time because otherwise they can't face themselves. So the whole point is how we have trained our mind. If mind is free of clutter and positively conditioned through all these disciplines, spiritual practices, all this, you will find it remains happy by itself. Otherwise, you require objects to keep you happy. So let's not reduce ourselves into the state where really I require some object to keep me engaged, otherwise I'll just go crazy. I require someone to be close to me, otherwise I'll... Don't reduce yourself to these states. This is what we teach in the science of happiness in IITs. That take care of your inner life. It's so important. Your thought, your emotion, your will, your awareness. These determine your levels of happiness and not just the money in your pocket and the gadgets in your home. Please remember this. Then, look at the indices of happiness in Yoga and Vedanta. The first index they will tell you is your emotional well-being. Because the stability of your emotions generates a huge amount of happiness for you. The stability of your emotional life, positive emotions, will generate a lot of well-being. So you see, proactive relationships and kindness in the heart will keep you happy always. So this is the first index of happiness. Second is high energy levels. Very high. If you have a clear mind and full of vital energy, you will be happy for no reason. Like you see children, so energetic and happy for no reason. Then you have high awareness. See there. In fact, this is a huge study in Vedanta, how your awareness levels contribute to your happiness. And I can give you any number of experiments conducted in modern neurophysiology on this. They have found that the deeper your awareness is, the happier you will be. In fact, happiness is an exponential function of your awareness. If you have low awareness, worry, fear, anger will trickle into your mind. You will lose your happiness. If you are fully aware and with no negatively conditioned thought process, you will be always happy even if there's nobody in your life, even if there's nothing substantial in your life. So high awareness is contributing to happiness. Recently, sometime back, there was an experiment conducted in New York State University. They wanted to study the meditative state through the third person perspective, which means through fMRI scans. They wanted to see how meditation feels like. And then what did they find? They brought a Tibetan monk who was very well trained in meditation, fixed all those electrodes, and requested him to go into a state of meditation. Now he was a veteran, he was a monk was given to long hours of meditation. So he just introduced a thought of loving kindness into his mind, and he immediately went into a deeply meditative state. On his self-report, he actually mentioned the clarity of awareness he was feeling. He in fact rated it from 1 to 9. Yes, in his self-report, he rated it from 1 to 9. Now I'm feeling the clear state of awareness, the freedom from thoughts, freedom from the bondage of even good thinking. Like this, he went on, and then he came to 9 and then 10. When he came to 10, the fMRI scan showed clearly that his brain, the prefrontal cortex ignited. And all those scientists were forced to say he's the happiest guy on earth. The entire mind is exploding with bliss. His brain shows it. Because they track it through gamma radiation. The amount of gamma radiation the brain can produce with distributed phase symmetry, of course, but in that episode of meditation, that determines his level of happiness and the state of mind which is of high awareness but no thought. That's the state. So they actually saw that his prefrontal cortex ignited and he exuded the blissfulness of his being. So what would you say to this? That is why I'm telling you, high awareness in your mind is an index of the highest level of happiness. Then the experience of interbeing. See, this is when you are deeply aware and happy, you will find the person in front of you also to be of my being. This is called understanding the interdependent nature of life. I don't see you as the individual that you are. I see you as essentially me in another form, as it were. My own being, you're an extension of my being. So a kind of unity with you comes naturally. This is what you will find in the lives of saints and sages. Yes? Why is it that they are able to draw us close to them? Why do we feel at home with them? Because of this factor. Because of this factor. Like a mother and child. From the mother's perception, the child is not another individual. It's an extension of herself. This comes naturally with spiritual growth. It comes naturally with meditation. The sense of interbeing, connectedness at a very deep level. So this is another index of happiness. And then of course serenity, an equanimous state of mind, deep inner balance, tranquility and calmness. All these are indices of happiness. Please understand. Don't give flimsy definitions for the indices of happiness. I have seen this on the net extensively. Study of happiness with very, very flimsy understanding and definitions. See, Vedanta goes to a very deep level. It will tell you these are the indices of happiness. That's why Vivekananda said, no two people see the same world. When you have a good mind, you will see this world as heaven. When you have a not good mind, you will see it as hell. Heaven and hell are extreme poles of your own consciousness. If you clear that consciousness, you will always have an experience, a heavenly experience. And if the consciousness is cluttered, unclear, negative, you will always have a hellish experience. So it's not so much to do with the external as to do with your inner life. Please understand this. Now, there are ways to quantify happiness, as I told you. You see, measuring happiness. Happiness is currently measured using three factors: positive emotion, absence of negative emotion, and life satisfaction. And then I have put the scales which they are using to measure happiness. One is the PANA scale, positive effect and negative effect schedule. This is fairly common, even here in the US it is being used. I don't know how many of you know it. Over a certain time period, you have to give a self-report of the kind of emotions you have in your mind. How much of positivity came, how much of negative thought came. Accordingly, the PANA scale is calculated. So it's a calibration of your moods, mental moods. But please remember, the absence of emotion or thought does not mean you are unhappy. Are you getting my point? Suppose your mind is bereft of emotion, good or bad, whatever. That does not mean, oh, you are in a morose state of mind. Not at all. If you have high awareness within you, you will be fine and blissful in that state. So this is not an exact scale, but attempts are being made to quantify happiness. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Then you have the SWLS, it's an older scale actually. Satisfaction of life scale, and the SH is subjective happiness scales. These are all the scales which have been used for the understanding of happiness. But in Yoga Vedanta, we use 4 parameters. The first one is what is called self-transcendence, which means you are not bound by your ego. If you have a sense of yourself, which is not ego bound, your sense of being will be vast. Can I repeat this? If you have a sense of yourself which is not ego bound, then your experience of yourself will be vast. This is what is called in the Chandogya Upanishad as the real happiness. Bhumaiva sukham, na alpe sukham asti. The vast is happiness. There is no happiness in the small. So self-transcendence is a kind of measure of your happiness. Self-transcendence means transcending the ego. The strong sense of I based on your individual body and mind. Transcending that a bit, going beyond that. If you actually check when you have been utterly happy, please check this just now. Sit straight all of you. Close your eyes, come on. Just for a minute. Think of the time when you have been extremely happy, like bubbling with happiness, and tell me, were you within the bounds of your ego at that time or not? Even the sense of I was not there, you were just happy, just energetic, just aware within yourself, full being, no sense of ego. Isn't it? This is what they are telling you. So always happiness comes as a burst of joy in your heart. And whatever you may call it in modern neurophysiology, it is always it produces a buoyancy within you, an energy within you, which is inescapable. And it satisfies you. It's an immersive experience, the real joy. Ananda. So this is what they are saying, and you will see the duration of this happiness is long. It's longer lasting. And the memory it leaves is so precious, so beautiful. You'll keep trying to, now that becomes your standard, you keep trying to come back to that again and again in life. That's why it is important to meditate. Your very standard of life, quality of life changes. Then it's a kind of ineffable joy. What is the meaning of ineffable? means you can't express it. You can't express it in known terms, you know. Like if I ask you now, tell me the taste of ghee. Can you tell me the taste of ghee? Clarified butter. Anybody can tell me? Ghee is just like ghee. Exactly. So this Ananda is just like Ananda. You can't express it. You can only feel it. Then the problem, this problem tolerance and negativity tolerance is absent in this level of joy. I mean, your negativity tolerance will be so high that problems and negativities are nothing to you. Because you have a level of balance within you, you have a level of balance which doesn't see the problem as a problem. It sees it so sympathetically, so kindly, that you won't go off your off track. You know, you won't get into anger and hatred and all this as a result of the problems of your whatever you face. Especially in the workplace, all this becomes very important, where you should have problem tolerance, ambiguity tolerance. So all this naturally comes when you attain a deeper level of happiness. In the Bhagavad Gita, beautifully it's described, you know, yam labdva chaparam labham manyate nadhikam tataha yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. These two go together. You know, it means attaining a state of happiness where you feel, I can't be happier than this. A sheer bliss. And along with that is the state where no sorrow can touch me. You are sure of that. See, life is a mixture of both. Joy will come, sorrow also can come. But you are untouched by it because your awareness has become so deep and touched a level where nothing can touch that level. So great balance and equanimity comes in life. The Sthita Prajna state of Bhagavad Gita based on this. You are deeply composed, so totally reliable under all conditions and circumstances. Then, as I told you, these beings showed us the highest level of happiness. And that's why even devotion to them yields very high levels of happiness. I remember the story I told you about Thakur's Samadhi states. I remember a story from Buddha's life. You know, once a young person approached him and started blurting out nonsense. That you are an imposter and you are no good and you are taking away so many young people from society. And spoke all sorts of nonsense, and the Buddha calmly, you see, that very face generates calmness in your mind. He just sat like that and didn't do anything about it. And his disciples were all, how this man can do this? And finally, the story even says that he spat on the ground and then left. And then they approached the Tathagata, the disciples, and said, why didn't you at least say one word? How can we stand this? And he said, why should I? See, if somebody offers me something and I don't take it, to whom does it belong? It belongs to that person. What gives these minds this kind of a deep inner restfulness, composure? They are unshaken. They never move out of their bliss. It is their awareness has been transformed. They won't move from there. They will never react negatively. They can't. They have become incapable of all that. Looking at the Buddha's face, people would ask him, are you an angel or a god? He would say, I am the awakened one. I have awakened to the depths of my being, and that is why I am like this. And you can too. It's the same being that we share, isn't it? Love and consciousness are expressions of one shared being. So, these masters teach us the greatest intelligence and bliss, actually speaking. Christ on the cross, imagine, in that extreme pain, he could pray, "Oh Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do." How is this possible? The Christ consciousness is the highest level of God consciousness. So all these masters, you must learn happiness from these lives. I tell you, one of the best ways to learn happiness is go through the life incidents these inspiring lives provide, and you will understand the levels of happiness we are capable of and what we are investing our energies into. This will also become very clear to us. So now let me go into the yogic view of happiness. We'll quickly go through a few important facts. See, yoga tells you fundamentally that if you can generate the state of ekagrata, which means very, very stable vrittis and pratyayas. See, vritti means the modification of your mind. Pratyaya means the content of your mind. Is it making sense, the two words? Yes? If these two are very stable, you will attain a state of deep concentration. If you are not flitting from one thought to another, your entire thought form is stable, very in one flow, one track, moving towards a very divine, elevated object, you will generate ekagrata. And that will make the object very dear to you. You will generate great love in your heart for the object. Ekagrata produces love. And love, the sign of love is deep absorption. Isn't it? Look, think of the time when you have had a deep devotional experience. It was so fulfilling, it was absorptive. Ekagrata. So this is an equation. Deep concentration with this level of stability will produce great love, devotion, happiness in your heart. So the 3 steps for happiness in yoga are described as calm mind in focus mode, concentrated mind. It's called Sajatiya Ekagra Vritti Pravaha. Same kind of thought modifications going on. And then the art of emptying mind, that is actually Santosha. Contentment. You feel contented at all times. A feeling of what we call satiety. That occurs. It is actually the art of decluttering. Emptying mind means actually decluttering it of negativity. So that you just remain deeply aware and with positive thought and emotion. Nothing else. And the next method which I have put there is this Maitri Karuna Mudita Upeksha is actually meant for controlling your response and reaction and to keep you away from negativity. What it means to say is be friendly towards those who are good, be compassionate towards the suffering, be happy towards those who are happy, and be upeksha actually means don't pay much attention to people who are negative. Because you should not be pulled into that circle, that world. So this is actually cognitive reframing, what we call in modern psychology. You can replace your thoughts. You can change the ways of your mind. This has been described in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So like this, you see, they will give you very good methods of happiness. Of course, the practice of samadhi gives superlative happiness. This is the conclusion of yoga. The Ashtanga Yoga culminates in this. When a minute portion of your energy travels along the nerve fiber and causes reaction, the perception is either dream or imagination. But when by the power of long internal meditation, the vast mass of energy stored up travels along the sushumna and strikes the centers, the reaction is tremendous, immensely more intense than the reaction of sense perception. That's when you call it super sensuous perception. So this produces the highest levels of happiness. I told you the experience of Sri Ramakrishna. See, in modern times, we have this spectacular uh, personality in front of us who shows us constantly he is going into that state and coming out of it. Coming out with difficulty, but still coming out and giving us this knowledge. One day, his face in samadhi would look like it would crack with happiness. One person has described it as it appeared like a cracked melon, just oozing out the inner bliss. And so when he came out of samadhi, this person asked him, "What exactly do you feel in that state?" He asked Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna said, "Well, will you understand if I told you, suppose a small fish was confined to a small pot and then suddenly released into the ocean, how would it feel?" I feel something like that in samadhi. I can't express it. Mukhe bola jaye na, he would say. It's ineffable. So you see, practice of samadhi gives superlative happiness. Those who have entered this state will not put anything above this. This is what happens. What to do? So we must know the highest reaches of happiness available to us, isn't it? That is why this study. Now let me go into the conclusions of yoga. You see, this is I put it all in graphs because easier to understand. And a lot of information is packed into this. Please understand. Look at graph A. Keep your eyes on graph A. You will see there it's a graph of happiness against time. Usually our mental states are such, there will be a certain baseline of happiness along which your moods fluctuate. So good things happen, good mood, then you come back to your baseline of happiness again. Bad things happen, you suffer something, again you come back to the baseline of happiness. Again good, you enjoy something, again bad mood, again you come back. Every time you will come back to the base level line of happiness, which is different in different people. Are you getting my point? Now, children have a different baseline of happiness altogether. For no reason they will be giggling and happy and bubbling with joy. So the baseline of happiness can be very different in different people. Now what yoga does for you is, it will raise that baseline of happiness very high because it is deepening your awareness and hence your mood fluctuations get regulated naturally. The higher the baseline of happiness, the lesser your mood fluctuations like this. Only good moods will prevail because you became deeply aware. So worry and tension will not have place in your mind. So you see, that's why I told you, yoga raises the very bar of happiness by raising the bar of your awareness. Is this making sense what I'm saying? Yes. So this is an important graph to understand how yoga works and where Yoga Vedanta contribute to the study of happiness. Look at graph B. It is a graph of awareness against vital energy. What is the meaning of this? Vital energy means the pran shakti within us. The sense of vitality we feel. If that is enhanced and peaked, it will lead to deeper awareness. This is what the graph is telling you. Higher the vital energy, greater will be your happiness. And lower your vitality, lower will be your happiness. That's why you need objects to keep you happy. So if you have enhanced vital energy, which is again what yoga is about, you so condition your habits, your thoughts, that you are always full of energy, bubbling with energy, high level energy. You will always remain fully aware. So you see, the equation is actually when you are vitally alive, you are deeply aware. When you are vitally alive, you will be deeply aware. So how to generate high levels of vitality? This burst of aliveness which you feel within you, how to enhance that? That is very important to know that. By regulating life, sattvic modes of life, good eating habits, proper food should go into the stomach and should go into all your senses. Even this is ahar, what you see, what you hear. Good thoughts, noble thoughts, and kind thoughts. And absolutely keeping distance from negativity and toxic people. Yes, anything that brings down your levels of vitality should be avoided. That's why take care, live a cautious life, a good life. And that's why they recommend holy company, devotional practices, spiritual practices, all this only for this reason. So this is actually the graph of sadhana. Keep your vitality in full form. Be fully alive and you will become deeply aware, and that will contribute to your happiness. So you see, RAF C and B are the summary of yoga. They will tell you that your happiness is an exponential function of your awareness. The greater your awareness, the happier you will be. And if there is low awareness, see what happens? Worry, anger, fear, all this will enter your mind. So deepen your awareness by raising your vital energies, your vitality. This is so very important. So these are some of the conclusions of Yoga Vedanta when it comes to the science of happiness. Now let me go into the Vedantic view of happiness. You see, Vedanta analyzes happiness in very deep ways. I'll give you a sample here. You have heard of Mandukya Upanishad, isn't it? Many of you have been listening to the videos. So there you will see they are studying these three states, Jagrat, Swapna and Sushuddhi. Jagrat is the waking state where your senses are fully awake, work functioning, and your mind is also fully functioning. But in dream state, your senses are closed, but your mind is functioning, the subconscious mind. And in deep sleep state, both senses and mind are shut. But they will ask you, don't you feel a sense of restfulness and happiness in deep sleep? Others, why do you prepare so much for it? Look at the preparation we make. The bed should be the American bed. And it should all be soft. We have hot drinks before we go to sleep. So I have a good night's deeply restful, peaceful sleep. Now if the mind also was shut, who experienced this? What a question, you see. They are asking this. The mind was also shut in deep sleep. Who experienced this deep restfulness, peacefulness? How do you know? Sukha maham aswab samna kinchit vedisha. I experience great happiness and every day I prepare for it. You can't do without deep sleep. So they are analyzing that experience deeply, and you see they come to this conclusion. That is why that there is a common factor to these three states. That is only your pure awareness. It persisted even in the state of deep sleep when the mind was shut down, and that is why you were happy even in that state. So actually what contributes to your happiness is your awareness. Not your mind, not your thoughts. See, bliss is the inherent nature of the Atman. It oozes out through the mind. So the mind is important, and since the clearer the mind, the more the bliss is felt. So bliss is the inherent nature of self, even as consciousness is. This is one of the important messages of Mandukya Upanishad. If you actually go to what it means, you will find this. You see, happiness is independent of objects, happiness is independent of mind. Happiness results from something behind the mind, which is called the self. This is the mind-boggling logic of Mandukya Upanishad, that intrinsically your consciousness holds your happiness. It's inherent in your being. But you have, superimposed it on objects outside of you. And what's the proof of that? The state of deep sleep, where no object, no sense stimulations, no mind, no mental stimulations, yet you were happy. How? The self is primarily responsible for your happiness. This is the idea. I hope you got the logic. I'm going a little fast because there's a time constraint, but this is the point. So you see, from this they will derive a few equations. We will derive a few equations. This is there in the Brahma Sutra 6.1. I have put it there. How Ananda is the inherent feature of Prajna, the deep sleeper or the individualized pure consciousness. So the equations they derive is, one first imagines joy to reside in objects. Next one understands, no, it was not in the object. Happiness was a state of my mind produced by the object. Then finally we understand, no, it was not even that. Happiness was the inherent property of myself, which got reflected in the mind and superimposed on the object. So when I understand adhyas, I will understand this third point. You will find this even in Buddhism. Even Buddha made statements to this effect that your very nature is happiness. Not that you have to extract it from somewhere. It's inherent being. Just touch it and you'll get it. Bhagavad Gita also gives you wonderful thoughts on happiness. You see, it will tell you there are three categories of happiness: Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. You fairly know these three categories, I'm sure. Human experience is such, you will know. The characteristics of the Sattvic are, it brings joy to the soul and intellect through tranquility, by control of senses and mind. And it may appear like poison at first, but like nectar at the end. But it will give you long-term satisfaction. Rajasic joy ensures from contact of senses with sense objects. Rajas. And it appears like nectar at first, but becomes poison at the end, and leads to short-term satisfaction. And tamasic joy has power to stupefy and destroy, born of indolence and obstinacy, leading to depression. So you see, the implications of this study in Bhagavad Gita are: happiness depends on the state of your mind. A pure sattvic mind is always happy with or without objects, and for every state there is a degree of associated happiness. Please see that. To maximize your happiness, clarify and intensify the state of your mind. Are you getting it? That's the point. Intensify and clarify the state of your mind. Transcending mind through yoga thus gives the highest happiness. What are the obstacles to happiness? These higher forms of happiness. The primary obstacle Vedanta will tell you is the alienation of mind from its source, the self. No Atma Jnana, no Atma Vidya. I have knowledge of everything in the universe, but no knowledge of myself. That's the primary cause for your unhappiness. Then second is, the next biggest chunk of your unhappiness is produced by emotional insecurities. Because no training of mind. Any form of emotion allowing it to flourish will result in all kinds of perverse attitudes and behaviors. And that leads to emotional insecurity. Not just it will mess up with your relationships, deep within you will remain emotional insecurity. So take care of these factors. That's what they are telling you. Third is the mind conditioned into negativity. You know this very well. Negative emotions in the mind will guarantee your the constant sense of sorrow. And then there are other few factors like a perfectionist who expects too much from something very meager. Social comparisons like jealousy and inferiority. A purely materialistic attitude, which means judging everything by the pleasure it gives your senses. And then maximizers are the simple greedy people who are never satisfied, unable to enjoy the present moment, and people with no gratitude. All these are responsible for they are obstacles to your happiness and responsible for your unhappiness. Please take account of this. So a self-alienated mind will remain unhappy no matter how positive its content. Isn't this true? This is the core cause for depression. See, they don't put it like this, but the fact is, really the mind doesn't know where to seek its source. It is riding the waves of all kinds of negative thoughts. That's why depression. Lack of self-knowledge. Mind remains alienated from the self. And remember, you don't have to be in the same room to catch someone's stress. Is this right? It is transmittable by email, text, WhatsApp, social media. Emotions are contagious online. If you are totally stressed out, you will spread it to people around you. It's called social contagion today. So your moods affect others. So be responsible. Don't affect adversely the moods of others. The neurophysiology of emotion, a bit we go into it and finish this talk. See, modern neurophysiology is giving you these facts that the bliss chemicals are the endorphins, and blessing and bliss come from the same root, and your prefrontal cortex is loaded with opiate receptors, And your happy chemicals are dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphin, all these. And emotions trigger the release of hormones. Remember this, that all these hormones, the chemicals, what are they triggered by? Your emotions and thoughts. So actually you rewire your brain or reset your brain through your mind. Is this right? Is there any other way? Can I inject dopamine into your brain and make you happy? I can't do that. Only by changing your thoughts you can generate the right chemicals in your brain. That's why always remain grateful, thankful, prayerful, and hence blissful. That's the bottom line. You only reset your brain, your neuroplasticity, your entire neurophysiology through your mind. That's why the mind sciences and self-knowledge is so important. How else will you change things? Hmm? If I give you a good injection of dopamine, you are not going to get happy. If you change your thoughts, you will be happy. Please understand. Because you feel happiness as the buoyancy and energy and awareness within you. You don't feel it as a chemical. It has been found, of course, that when you are happy, there is some chemical in your brain. That is definitely there, but it doesn't work the other way around. Then, the summary of this entire presentation then becomes happiness is the inherent nature of the self. It is perceptible to the mind through reflected consciousness. So happiness is a state where normal awareness is cleansed and heightened. Happiness is completely independent of objects, fundamentally. And lower and cheap forms of delight can be got easily, but higher forms of delight, higher and fulfilling happiness requires discipline. Happiness and misery are states, Vivekananda says, and states must change. But the nature of the Atman is bliss, that Ananda level of happiness, you see. Peace unchanging. We have not to get it, we have it already. Only wash away the dross and see it. This has been the expert opinion of all the masters. So let us take it into account. In the study of the science of happiness, I will stop the presentation here and we will open up for Q&A. Please feel free to answer your questions. We have a separate mic for that.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Mataji, for a wonderful, insightful presentation on the science of happiness. I have 3 thoughts. They may or may not be questions, but they are thoughts. Toward the very end, I'll start from the end. You mentioned to change our thoughts to be happy. And at some point you also mentioned to be deeply self-aware in that meditative state, which is beyond the thoughts, would bring permanent happiness or bliss state. Did you mean that before we get there, first we have to change our thoughts?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the way, yeah.
Thank you. So that's one thought. The second thought I have is, would it be accurate, in your opinion, to say that the physical, mental, and intellectual level of happiness that you presented are impermanent in nature? Therefore, we cannot, we as a being, I think we want to be permanently secured. Security is what we are looking for.
Yeah.
And none of these things are providing us permanent security.
Yes.
The body is here
Yes.
today, right now. I feel secured in the body. Tomorrow I may not, and so on. So would it be okay to say then we will never be happy until we are permanently secure?
I would rather say you will only be happy, completely happy, when you taste of spiritual bliss. And until we taste of that, we are hankering after higher and higher forms of happiness. But we will keep faltering, sort of. You proceed a little, then you go back a little, and then proceed. So that's the stage of sadhana. You keep doing that. But the ultimate satisfaction that we are all yearning for will come only with the higher levels of meditation. Meditation turns into ecstasy, turns into what that samadhi like state, and it will give you a complete understanding of what happiness is. Until then, really, you can't know the full depth of the happiness you are capable of. Yes, we can tell you this definitely. It's 100% guaranteed that the state of meditation will teach you the deepest things, insights about happiness. Until then, you can't have this level of intelligence. I can tell you. You'll keep shifting from object to object and experimenting with new objects, and you even treat people as objects to keep you happy. You're experimenting with what will keep you happy and secure. So I think that's why this has to be done. Yeah.
Thank you. The third thought I have is, would it be accurate to say that the happiness that we experience at physical level, mental level, intellectual level, the very thing that we derive this happiness from,
Yeah.
and you already have called this, I think let's call this object, the
Yeah.
very object from which we derive this happiness from, have the other side of the object which has the unhappiness
Yes.
hidden in it.
Yes.
And how do we then tread a path of not permanent, but at least a how do I say, a continuous stream? Well, maybe I'm already contradicting myself. But how do we jump from one thing to the other thing, to the other thing, to the other thing in the sadhana path, where we are experiencing greater and greater and greater joy until we reach that permanent.
See, the very nature of sadhana is it will keep unraveling higher and higher levels of happiness to you. No object is capable of doing that. Only sadhana has this capacity that today I had a deepened sense of awareness and I understood the level of bliss it brought me. Tomorrow I will keep this as the standard and aim further. This happens when you practice meditation, like continuously, over a period of time, you will understand I can deepen my happiness. But no object will give you this kind of a research, isn't it? Can it give you, tell me, now suppose I have 2 cars, but my neighbor has 3. Now what will happen in my mind? I should have 4. Only this level of joy your object can give you. This kind of a greed, a sense of comparison, and hence a feeling of superiority. These levels of joy can give you. You can't even call it joy actually. Some kind of a satisfaction you get out of it. But this kind of a moving upward in terms of awareness and vital energy will come only when you divinize life, make meditation a habit. Then you will feel higher and higher levels of happiness naturally, which are not based on objects.
Thank you so much.
That's why you see all spiritual people become quite independent of the external, isn't it? At least they try to be like that. Yeah.
I have 2 questions. My first one is, how do you join your subconscious mind to your conscious mind and breathe through the whole in one consciousness?
How to produce one consciousness, that is what he's saying. Because we do have a conscious mind, a subconscious mind, and an unconscious mind. See, actually the whole purpose of yoga is to make your mind fully conscious. Because for many of us, conscious life is only a strip on the surface. Most of us live very deep subconscious and unconscious lives. We aren't even conscious of our actions and words. Yes, so very relevant question here. How to bring the whole thing to the conscious plane? Through the practice of deepening awareness. When awareness comes to the forefront and assumes, the direction of my life, you will see the mind becomes fully conscious gradually. If I live unaware or in states of, tamas, you will lose this completely. You are actually an unconscious being, like sleepwalking, something like that. Sleepwalking with eyes open. Many people are like that, a dazed look on the face. So, becoming deeply conscious is the secret of yoga. It is the method of yoga.
My second question is, if you are trying to create a balanced mind and a rajasic or tamastic thought occurs to you, how do you cast it away and never let it come back?
It's so beautiful to see this in this child. See, it's a beautiful question. What to do when a tamasic thought attacks you? The nature of the mind is all these three elements are there. That's why occasionally they can pop up. But through spiritual practice and discipline, you can bring your mind to the state of what we call, it's called an exalted awareness, rarefied awareness, so that no negative thought will come in without your permission. Is it making sense? So if anger is arising, I know anger is arising. I will not allow it. I want to say something bad to someone, I won't allow it. This level of awareness has to come. That's when you become human. Otherwise, you're only retaliating, constantly reacting negatively, and you create a messy situation always. So, to get out of tamas and rajas into sattva requires some amount of discipline. Good habits at this age, very important. Then exposing yourself to scriptural knowledge, very important. Good associations, holy company, very important. Sattvic ways of life. You will be in full energy and intelligence will be just blooming, You will be sparkling with intelligence. This is what is has to happen.
Thank you.
There's one question at the back, right at the back.
I think some of these questions would benefit from an understanding that there's no ownership of self.
Yes.
The ego is an abstraction of eternity. The idea I am. It's not me that will become ultimately completely happy as ego. It's because that is the nature of understanding that there is only God.
Please keep the mic closed.
There is only God. It's eternal, it's non-relative, it's the absolute truth. Our relativity is, as you spoke in the beginning,
Right.
Not the Sattvic, but the other.
Tamasic.
Well, not Sattvic, yeah, I'm sorry, we don't have sorry, bad. Rajasic. But let's go with Lao Tzu, the other. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. The Tao that can be named is the mother of the 10,000 things. The singularity of the whole is undivided eternity. This moment is eternal, no matter how it seems to you and you. I'm sorry. If any, I can't repeat any. But that's probably enough. But the sense of ownership, what falls away in samadhi, is the idea that you own yourself.
Yes, see, he is talking of a very important fact. The feel of samadhi is when the I sense has totally dropped, pure being reigns. These are the words we use in Vedanta. The idea is this: how does Vedanta understand your ego? See, the light of pure being that you are reflects in the mind and makes you mentally aware. Now, in that mentally aware mind, a vritti, ahamatmika antakarana vritti is created. An individualized sense of consciousness, being, which can attract attributes to itself and appear as a personality and an individual. That is the ego. So it has no real substantial, it's not real. It's a shadow-like thing which actually functions on this relative consciousness, the consciousness of self reflected in mind. So how much will you invest into something so shadowy and hazy? That's why Vedanta tells you that building up ego is not building up life. For most people, building ego is building life, you see, because their identity is invested in the ego. See, most people are using 50% of their life in building identity and other 50% in defending it. So no time to search for the real I. Am I right? Yes. Why is this happening? Only because your concept of yourself is the ego. Now Vedanta fundamentally hits you here. It will tell ego is not you. Ego is an assumption. You have borrowed attributes from the external world and the reflected consciousness has been converted into a ahamatmika vritti, a kind of antakarana vritti, a kind of thought. It's nothing but a thought. And you think I'm so and so, I'm this kind of an individual, or with a lot of puffed up pride included in that. This is how you become a somebody. So initially in Vedanta, you have to become a nobody, at least in understanding, and try to see if this is a truth, that my real being is reflected in the mind, creating my mental awareness. That is when you come into that kind of a state, when you know being is more real than the ego. So what he said is really very valid, important. This is how Vedanta understands it. Yes, she has a question.
Pranams Mataji.
Yeah.
My question is about social contagion of emotion. You mentioned the spread of negative emotion through networks.
Right.
Could you comment about the collective movement towards happiness and what a collective spread of happiness might look like? How can we create a local and global movement of happiness?
By diving deep into the science of happiness. If enough young people understand these fundamental facts about happiness, you can control the social contagions. Because most of these youngsters, this is what they are suffering from, They are totally not in charge of the emotions in their mind. And they are very eager to make relationships and do all this, but not in charge of their own emotion. So what is it going to lead to? Tell me, social contagions. So if this has to stop, emotional maturity must come, which means I can handle my emotions by myself very well. And I don't give in to negative emotions. In fact, I don't have them. To generate this state of mind, you require some amount of spiritual practice. Isn't it? Some level of discipline. See, devotion is such a beautiful way to condition your emotion. Am I right? But they won't do this. So some of these practices very important to practically perform, so that then it becomes, when enough now. See, actually there is a movement called the Sattvic life. Have you seen? There is a movement called the Sattvic life, and Sattvic life is happiness, is how they say it. Positive psychology has thrown so many insights into the science of happiness. So all these must become part of our everyday dialogue. Then it's possible to create a movement which will pursue the science of happiness in the right manner. Otherwise, it's only about pursuing some kind of sensate pleasure and going anywhere with that. This is all that today's youngsters are understanding by happiness. This is the huge problem. It's happening everywhere, it's global, all these phenomena.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for being here. My question is about the self. If we are to become more aware of the self And if young people can become more and more aware of the self, what self is it of which they're becoming aware?
Very good. So it's a real Vedantic question. What is the self? What do you become aware of? See, what we are calling the self is nothing but pure consciousness. Now, just now we are only mentally aware. Am I right? We are mentally aware. When you deepen this awareness, what form does it take? You deepen this awareness through the yogas, through meditation. What form does it take? It takes the form of more and more clarified awareness. So, in that state, your sense of I changes. When you reach rock bottom, the ultimate, you will know I am the self. I am pure consciousness. This is not the I which is the ego. So it has been, in our scriptures it's beautifully put as you can't even say I in that state. Just being. But you can only reach that state by deepening your awareness. What are we calling awareness? That consciousness which you are, when it is reflected in the mind, it becomes your awareness. And just now you are thinking, that is me. That is not yet you, the real you. But you deepen that. That is what spiritual practice is about. Clarify it, deepen it. It will lead you to the state of pure being. In that state, there is no asking, is this the ultimate? Because you see, when you reach the peak of Everest, have you to ask, oh, is this the peak or is the one more step is there? You don't have to ask that. You know it. It's like that.
Thanks, Mataji, for the enlightening talk. My question is about meditation. I practice meditation, but the problem which majority of the people have is being in a meditative state all over the day, right? So, because in the practical situations, right, you get emotional. I mean, day-to-day aspect of life, you basically have show your emotions in form of anger, hatred, right? Even though you don't like it. People ask for it in certain cases, even in your workplaces, right? So, how to get rid of those things and make a meditative part of your life, actually, meditative life?
So, how to get rid of our negativities, and then only you can progress spiritually. There are many ways to remain positive. First of all, you must understand the laws of positive thinking. Have you watched that video, Miracle of Positive Thinking? Have you watched? I have put 3 principles there. What are they? First is, what you repeatedly think you will become. See, this is something more than your law of attraction. We'll go to the depth of your thought process. Why negative emotions come in our mind? What you repeatedly think you are going to become. What you repeatedly feel you are going to experience, and what you repeatedly imagine you are going to create. Now, if I keep thinking somebody is so bad and so toxic towards me and doing this to me, if this is repeated, what will happen? I am bound to get angry. I am bound to take revenge or some form of retaliation, isn't it? Now, how do I control this? How do I control this? The first mechanism to control negative emotion is you must attain calm of mind. So then you see the picture as it is. Deep calmness will make you see the picture as it is. That person may be throwing negative vibes at me. That doesn't mean I can harm him. If I try to harm, what happens to me? I will become more negative than ever. So rather, I will pray for him. I will try to radiate a little goodness towards him. So this will only come when I am in charge of my mind, isn't it? Otherwise, he controls me actually. He is controlling my emotion. So in the workplace especially, all this comes in such a big way that all the more meditation must be practiced in corporates, in workspaces where you really are interacting with people, so that my mind is so fundamentally calm. I know what thought to put where, when, and I will not retaliate negatively at all. That much awareness should come into the system. Otherwise, it's only you are bashing each other up, all the time, and you will remain in negativity. This is the problem. Complaining, brooding, blaming, all this gets us nowhere in the long run. Rather, not reacting, but praying for that person and encouraging positivity around you will work. Isn't it? Does it make sense? Yeah. So it can be done if I'm more aware than identified with my thought process. So let me tell you a joke and we'll end up. I never told you any jokes, all very serious stuff. There is this lady who is constantly blaming her husband. All the time. All the time blaming her husband. And one day she is telling her friend about her husband. For years I wondered where he spent his evenings. Where he was. One evening I came home early and there he was. One evening she came home early and he was right there. So he was at home and she was the one who was out all the time. The point is this, our blame game is like that. The truth will come out. Whenever you are in negativity, you cannot change situations. You can only change a situation when you are positive. Knowing this, take charge of your mind. Making sense? Okay. I think time is up. Yes, last question.
Thank you for your talk, Mataji. It's very lovely. I have a question that's kind of drawing from this book called Hinduism and Ecology, which I think was sold by one of the missions, maybe. Oh no, never mind. Okay, never mind. But basically, the author, he's connected with Schumacher College, which has a lot of programs in ecology, and so he kind of draws in some of Gandhi's philosophy and proposes this structural shift to a village kind of unit as the ideal kind of infrastructure that we should all adopt. And so I was interested to know, how does this relate to the practice of yoga? So is the practice of Raja Yoga incompatible with contemporary lifestyle? And is this kind of village structure necessary for or entailed by, or neither?
I don't subscribe to that because from a global village you can't go back to the village structure, and we live in the age of artificial intelligence and robots, and you can't really put a reverse gear to all this. You must be able to practice yoga where you are. And Vivekananda said this is the goal and this is perfectly possible. Yoga is not for the Himalayan caves. Although it may have been discovered there, Vedanta was discovered there, but anybody, anywhere can practice it. That's when it becomes a science, isn't it? Anybody, anywhere can practice it, given the same internal conditions. So you must be able to practice it where you are, and don't try to change these external systems so much. They won't change anyway. The next generation will go one step more forward. They will be on maybe another planet. You can't change. Where will you create a village there? You can't change. The only way is forward. But I should so train my mind that I can do my yoga anywhere. Because it's to do with your inner equipment, it's to do with your inner life that goes with you wherever you are. This is the goal. Making sense?